Think about the last time you got something in your eye. A speck of dust, maybe an eyelash. You blinked it out in 30 seconds, rinsed it under a tap, and forgot about it by lunchtime. But for the vast majority of human history, the same eye that teared up over a piece of dust was also being hit by sparks from open fires, splinters from bone-splitting tools, debris from stone napping, and the blinding glare of snow reflecting sunlight across frozen landscapes. And when something went seriously wrong with your vision, there was no optometrist, no surgery, no lens to correct the damage. So, what actually happened to ancient humans who lost their sight? The answer will change the way you think about what it means to be human. And it starts with a skeleton. In 1994, archaeologists excavating a cave site in southern Italy called Romito uncovered the remains of a young man who had lived approximately 10,000 years ago. He had severe acromegaly, a hormonal condition that causes abnormal bone growth throughout the body, making normal movement deeply difficult and often affecting vision through pressure on the optic nerves. This was not a man who could hunt. This was not a man who could easily forage, carry loads, or contribute to the group in the ways that traditional survival logic would require. And yet his bones showed he survived well into adulthood. Someone fed him. Someone looked after him. In a world where every calorie had to be hunted or gathered, this group chose to carry a member who could not fully carry himself. Romito 2 is not unique. At La Chapelle-aux-Saints in France, archaeologists found a Neanderthal skeleton over 50,000 years old. This individual had lost most of his teeth long before death, had severe arthritis, and showed healed injuries that would have made independent survival nearly impossible. He too lived far longer than his physical condition should have allowed. At Shanidar Cave in Iraq, one of the Neanderthal individuals found showed a withered arm, likely blind in one eye and deaf in one ear. Yet evidence suggested he survived into his 40s, an extraordinary age for that period. These weren't accidents of archaeology. They were evidence of something deliberate. Ancient humans were choosing, again and again, to keep their vulnerable members alive. But survival required more than just charity. It required the group to adapt around whoever was struggling, and for the individual to adapt even more. Eye injuries in the ancient world were not rare. They were a constant grinding risk. Stone napping, the process of striking flint to create sharp tools, sends razor-sharp fragments flying at speeds fast enough to penetrate the eye. Open fires, which ancient humans lived beside for hundreds of thousands of years, produced sparks and smoke that caused chronic irritation, infection, and in severe cases, permanent corneal scarring. Hunting close to large animals meant hooves, horns, and bone fragments traveling at unpredictable angles. Snow blindness, caused by UV radiation reflecting off snow and ice, could temporarily or permanently damage vision in populations living at northern latitudes. The ancient world was not gentle on eyes. Here's where it gets fascinating. Some ancient peoples didn't just treat eye injuries after they happened, they engineered solutions to prevent them entirely. The Inuit and other Arctic peoples, living under conditions where reflected UV radiation from snow could cause temporary blindness within hours of unprotected exposure, developed what are almost certainly the world's first sunglasses. Carved from bone, ivory, or driftwood, these thin, slitted goggles worked on a simple principle. A narrow, horizontal slit dramatically reduced the amount of light entering the eye while still allowing enough vision to navigate, hunt, and travel. Specimens recovered from archaeological sites across the Arctic date back over 2,000 years, with some researchers suggesting the technology is considerably older, based on its distribution across isolated Arctic cultures with no documented contact with each other. The physics were identical to modern polarized lenses. The materials were bone and sinew. The problem had been identified, studied, and engineered around centuries before anyone thought to write down the solution. And yet, ancient humans developed responses to these threats that go far beyond simply enduring them. Archaeological and ethnographic evidence from hunter-gatherer societies around the world shows a consistent pattern of plant-based treatments for eye conditions. Eyebright, a flowering plant used across multiple ancient cultures, contains compounds that modern researchers have confirmed reduce inflammation in eye tissue. Honey, applied directly to the eye, was used in ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, and independently by indigenous cultures in the Americas, and modern ophthalmologists have now confirmed its genuine antibacterial properties. Cool compresses made from specific leaves appear in ancient medical traditions on every inhabited continent. The Edwin Smith Papyrus, one of the oldest known medical documents dating to ancient Egypt around 1600 BCE but believed to copy much older texts, contains specific instructions for treating eye wounds, including cleaning procedures and the application of medicinal compounds directly to the cornea. None of these cultures were copying each other. They were all finding the same answers to the same problem through the same brutal process of trial and error that drove every other form of ancient medicine. But the most sophisticated ancient response to eye disease wasn't a plant remedy at all. It was surgery. The procedure is called couching, and it involved using a thin, sharp instrument to push a clouded lens, a cataract, out of the line of vision and into the back of the eye. The first written records of this procedure come from India, from the Sushruta Samhita, an ancient Sanskrit medical text describing the operation in precise technical detail, dating to somewhere around 800 BCE. But archaeological and historical evidence suggests versions of the technique were practiced even earlier across South Asia and the Middle East. The procedure didn't restore perfect vision, but it restored functional vision, the difference between total blindness and being able to see shapes, light, movement, and faces. For a person living in a world without written text or detailed visual tasks, that was often enough to dramatically change quality of life. And the instruments used were not primitive guesswork. Archaeologists have recovered thin bronze needles from ancient Indian and Roman contexts that match descriptions of couching instruments almost exactly. Precision-made tools designed specifically for operating on one of the most delicate structures in the human body. The deeper question, though, is what happened to people for whom no remedy worked? What happened to those who were simply permanently blind? And here the anthropological evidence becomes genuinely surprising. Across multiple ancient and indigenous cultures studied by modern researchers, blind individuals consistently occupied roles of specific social value. Oral traditions, the backbone of every pre-literate human society, required no eyesight to master and transmit. A blind person with an exceptional memory could become the keeper of genealogies, histories, laws, and ceremonial knowledge that the entire group depended on. In many documented hunter-gatherer societies, the individuals with the most detailed knowledge of plant properties, seasonal patterns, and group history were older, often partially disabled members whose physical limitations had pushed them toward mastery of information rather than physical labor. The neuroscience behind this is striking. When the brain is deprived of visual input, it doesn't simply leave that processing power unused, it reassigns it. Studies of blind individuals show measurably enhanced performance in spatial memory, auditory processing, and tactile sensitivity. The brain of a person who has been blind from early childhood processes touch, sound, and spatial relationships using the same neural tissue that sighted people use for vision. An ancient hunter who lost their sight but survived, supported by their group, may well have developed tracking abilities, environmental awareness, and memory capabilities that made them genuinely more valuable in certain roles than their fully sighted companions. This isn't speculation. It's documented in living hunter-gatherer communities today, where older visually impaired members frequently serve as primary advisors on plant knowledge, navigation, and seasonal behavior of prey animals. Knowledge accumulated over decades that no younger, fully sighted member of the group has yet had time to gather. There is also direct skeletal evidence that ancient humans understood the link between protecting the eye and preventing injury, not just treating damage after it occurred. Excavations at Neanderthal sites in Europe have found evidence of individuals with healed orbital fractures, the bones surrounding the eye socket, that showed careful, prolonged recovery. The nature of these healed injuries suggests the individuals were kept still and protected during healing, something that would have required deliberate, extended care from others in the group. You do not accidentally rest and recover from a serious facial injury in the ancient world. Someone made that possible. This is the part that most documentaries about prehistoric life leave out entirely. The image of ancient humans as purely physical survival machines, where anyone who couldn't hunt or fight was simply expendable, is not supported by the evidence. The skeleton record tells a different story. Healed injuries, survived disabilities, and individuals who clearly lived well beyond the point where they could have survived alone appear consistently across the archaeological record from at least 500,000 years ago onward. The care of the vulnerable is not a modern invention. It is one of the oldest documented human behaviors we have. Go back to that speck of dust in your eye, the tap you rinsed it under, the clean water, the mirror you used to check afterward. None of that infrastructure exists without the accumulated medical knowledge and social choices of thousands of generations before you. But more than that, every time a modern society chooses to support someone who cannot fully support themselves, it is continuing a tradition that stretches back further than our species can clearly remember. Ancient humans didn't keep their blind and injured members alive because it was easy or convenient. They kept them alive because something in the way they organized themselves had decided, long before anyone thought to write it down, that a person's value was not identical to their physical output. If this changed how you think about the people your ancestors chose to protect, let me know in the comments. Which part of this video surprised you the most, and subscribe if you want more stories like this, because the history of what makes us human is far older and far stranger than anything we were taught in school.